Okay, basically, in the immigration field, there are 5 ways that you can immigrate either to the United States or Canada. So
Okay.
I'll go through the 5 ways for people who are
Okay.
thinking about it. I'm thinking of people in the United States who may be thinking, gee, I'm not sure I'm happy here. Would Canada be an option? And also thinking about Canadians who, notwithstanding everything, have an interest in going to the United States. For example, investors who are buying properties or things like that.
Okay.
So the 5 ways basically boil down to this. Number one way is if you have a family member that can sponsor you. The best way is if you have a spouse who will sponsor you. That's a reasonably quick way for you to be able to immigrate either to the United States or Canada. In the case of the United States, there's a thing called a fiancé visa for those who want to dip their toe in the water before they jump in. So they can invite their fiancé in, and then
Okay.
everything works up, gets married, and then sponsor for permanent residence. Canada doesn't have that. But getting married and moving is one definite way. Other more distant family members can sponsor. For example, brothers and sisters, mother, father, can sponsor son, daughter, things of that nature. And more details, you have to talk to an immigration lawyer or do some research to figure that out. But that's number one, is family-based immigration.
Sure.
Number two is an area you've talked about here tonight, and that's the area of asylum or
Okay.
what's called refugee status, generally internationally. So if you are someone who fears that they will be persecuted by their country of origin, their citizenship country, and you want to escape from that fear, so it's called a well-founded fear of persecution based on the traditional grounds that are accepted, that are things like race, religion, ethnic origin, social class, gender, things of this nature. If you have a well-founded basis of fear, let's say you show up on the doorstep of the United States or on the doorstep of Canada, you can claim asylum in the United States or refugee status in Canada, and you can get in that way to either country. A third way is you can study your way in. If you want to be a student and you sign up, for example, to college and you're accepted in a college in the United States or Canada, you can get a student visa. And once you have a student visa, over time, you can progress through from student to postgraduate student work permit, and from work permit to a simple work permit or H-1B visa in the United States, for example, and from H-1B visa to a green card in a process that can be followed. A fourth way is to invest your way in. So, for example, in the United States, there's a program called the EB-5 program, where if you invest 800,000 US dollars for a period of 5 years in what's called a regional center project, such as a hotel, an apartment building, housing development, especially rural, for example, projects. Oil wells is an example of a rural project. Low-cost housing outside the major cities is another example. Or infrastructure is another one, or high unemployment area. At any rate, any of those kind of projects, if you invest $800,000 for a period of about 5 years, at the end of the 5-year periods, you get your money back. Now, this is a commercial investment, so there's risk involved, but hopefully you would pick a project that's good. You can get a green card, permanent resident card, and eventually citizenship that way. And the final way, and the same is true in Canada. Well, the same was true in Canada with what was called the startup visa in Canada, but that's no longer around. There's still some provincial programs that can be used for investors to get into Canada. Then finally, the last way is to work your way into the United States or Canada. A traditional way, often that I am employed to help people with, is the so-called intercorporate transferee. This is a classic example would be
Okay.
a manager, let's say, in Tokyo for
Okay.
Toyota is being transferred by Toyota from Tokyo to New York to manage a plant in the United States. That's a classic, what's called L1 intercorporate transferee visa, whereby the person, if he's worked overseas for 1 year in the last 3 years and comes to the US to manage or be an executive in the US, or even a person with specialized knowledge, they can get a work permit and ultimately they can transition to permanent resident status under that program.
Okay.
A very similar program exists in Canada. It's called the Intercorporate Transfer ICT program, where someone can transfer from the United States, for example, to Canada and live in Canada. There's some slightly different rules involved there where you have to show significant benefit involved. So that's one of many work ways that a person can make their way into the United States or Canada.